stories around the world to stories here at home.
This is the National News Broadcast.
Pleasant evening. I'm Delanjali Anand.
And I'm Tilina Udayaratne. We begin with a quick check on tonight's top stories. Foreign Secretary says the government has directed its attention in repatriating Sri Lankan migrant workers stranded overseas on priority basis. Buddhist devotees commemorate Vesak in accordance with healthcare methodologies. A group of patients at the IDH observed SIL today. The most number of recoveries from COVID-19 in the country was recorded today. The President emphasizes on the need for a new economic model for Sri Lanka. The UN warns on the chances of witnessing multiple famines during the global lockdown if the lives of millions of people cannot be saved in the fragile nations. Well, on your top local story this evening, today is the Vesak full moon Poya Day, which depicts many significant events of the historic Buddha Sasana tradition, including the Buddha's birth, enlightenment and parinirvana of Gautama Buddha. Commemorating the Vesak festival, the global Buddhist community engage in religious observances in their respective residences. The theme of this year's Vesak festival is Arogya Parama Labha Santutti Paramang Danang, which depicts health is the ultimate profit, happiness is the ultimate wealth. According to Buddhist philosophy, the birth of a Buddha is a rare and noble phenomenon that occurs in many eons. Prince Siddhartha was born on a Vesak full moon Poya Day at the Lumbini Saluyana in Kimbulwat Nuwara. He attained enlightenment on a similar day as today by understanding the Four Noble Truths. Lord Buddha rendered understanding on the existence to mankind and showed them the path to nirvana. The visit of Gautama Buddha to his father's kingdom, Kimbulwatpura, performing the phenomenon Yama Maha Pelahara to demolish the vanity of the Shakyas who were ruling the kingdom, undertaking the third visit to Sri Lanka and leaving the footmark of Gautama Buddha on top of the Adam's Peak are several other events associated with the Vesak festival. The parinirvana of Lord Buddha, who preached Dhamma for 45 years, occurred at the Upavatta Saluyana belonging to the Malla kings on a Vesak full moon Poya Day. Sri Lankan Buddhist devotees continue to celebrate Vesak since the days of the ancient kingdoms and up until now. Aiming to create virtuous society, the 197th sermon of the Yamadam Sisila Dham sermon series was held at the Temple Trees today. The event was held under the patronage of Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. The Dham sermon was delivered by the chief incumbent of the Bellangwila Rajamahaviharaya and chief Sanganayaka of Singapore, Venerable Dr. Vellangwila Dhammaratana Thera. The Saddhamma Varsha Poya Day program, organized by the national television, was held at the Olaboduwa Rajamahaviharaya today. The program was organized in accordance to the guidance of the chief incumbent of the Olubuduwa Rajamahaviharaya and the Madhyasthanadipati of the Talagala Vipassana Meditation Center, Venerable Uduwe Homaloka Thera. The program consisted of various religious events, including the Dhamma discussions. The program was jointly organized and conducted by the Ministry of Buddha Sasana, Department of Buddhist Affairs and the All Ceylon Shasana Rakshaka Balamandalaya. Secretary to the Ministry of Buddha Sasana, Cultural and Religious Affairs, Bandula Harishchandra, Commissioner of Buddhist Affairs, Sunanda Karya Peruma, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation, Dr. Nihal Jayatilaka, its Director General Ajit Naragala, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, Jagat Vikramasinghe, its Director General Chandrapal Lienage were present on this occasion.
Meanwhile, in spite of devotees engaged in observing SIL in temples and their residences, Infectious Disease Hospital in Anguda also conducted a SIL campaign at their hospital premises today. The entire world has been engulfed in the COVID-19 pandemic at present. People have been requested to adhere to the health instructions while maintaining social distancing. Meanwhile, a group of COVID-19 patients are currently receiving treatments at the IDH hospital. They were given the opportunity today to observe SIL commemorating the Vesak full moon Poya Day. The alms for the patients were given by the hospital staff. Several hospital staff members also opted to observe SIL along with the patients.
The Vesak Day message issued by the chief prelates of the tri-sects indicate that the most appropriate manner to commemorate the birth, enlightenment and parinirvana of Lord Buddha should be by engaging in Amisa and Pratipatti Puja while remaining in their respective residences. This was cited in the Vesak Day message issued with the signatures of Chief Prelate of the Malwatha chapter, Most Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Sumangala Thera, Chief Prelate of the Asgiriya chapter, Most Venerable Varakaguda Sri Jnanaratana Thera, Chief Prelate of the Amarapura sect, Most Venerable Kotugoda Sri Dhammavasa Thera, and Chief Prelate of the Sri Ramanya sect, Most Venerable Napane Pemasiri Thera. The chief prelates of the tri-sects have requested the Buddhist community to engage in religious activities in their respective residences without organizing religious programs in temples and other sites in the country. The chief prelates have emphasized that with the aspiration to ensure safety and security of the public, the Buddhist community should be cautious on the manner in conducting Vesak religious activities based on the COVID-19 pandemic situation which has affected the entire world. They have also cited that the Vesak full moon Poya Day is the most sacred commemorative religious event of the global Buddhist community. His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit said that Vesak is being commemorated this year at a time where countries are hit by a global pandemic. In accordance to their understanding, mankind has had to face this pandemic due to its disassociation with accepted values and of its selfishness. The global attention has been drawn towards the teaching of Lord Buddha like never before during this pandemic, as Lord Buddha has taught the world that all beings, including animals, should be content and well. The Archbishop of Colombo urged all Catholics to assist Buddhists in whatever way to commemorate Vesak. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said the Buddhists in Sri Lanka, together with the fellow Buddhist brethren the world over, celebrate Vesak, their supreme religious festival, with much religious fervor and enthusiasm. This year, similar to the rest of the world's Buddhist community, Sri Lankan Buddhists too have to perform religious practices of Vesak in the backdrop of the pandemic threatening the entire human race. Such calamities are not rare in human history. During the time of Lord Buddha, Visala Mahanuwara of Damadiva was threatened by three fears. It ended when a recitation of Buddhist stanzas was conducted as discoursed by Lord Buddha. The President said he is confident that the country too could attain physical and spiritual health by practicing the teachings of Lord Buddha during this Vesak festive season. We have the blessings and guidance of the Mahasangha to conduct the state Vesak festival by using electronic technology. Hence, the Buddhist community can perform religious practices at home with utmost devotion to Lord Buddha. On this day of Vesak, all can take the righteous path by not carrying out deeds that may regret, as Lord Buddha advised. At this time of calamity, let the nation work to save the people and the country by practicing the teachings of Lord Buddha and adhering to the corona prevention measures. In his Vesak Day message, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa said that the Sri Lankans are about to free the country from the clutches of COVID-19 due to the dedication, commitment, patience and equanimity of Buddhists and other communities. Hence, the Vesak festival should be celebrated by protecting the victories of the combat operations against COVID-19. The curfew would not affect the dharmic life in any way. Buddhists who led a dharmic life for more than 2000 years have disciplined to practice Amisa and Pratipatti Puja at home. It is customary for Buddhists to decorate and light oil lamps at home. The pandemic is not a barrier to rid of sin and develop merit. In his belief, the Prime Minister said that the discipline practiced by the Buddhists has helped in gaining victory over COVID-19. Therefore, during this Vesak, let the Buddhist community discipline mind, body and word and express love and kindness to the whole world. The message issued by the United Nations for Vesak has emphasized that priority should be directed to our health and security as well as the community and closed ones amid many challenges before us. As cited in Lord Buddha's Dhamma, all can journey towards sustainable development by ensuring their security and health. Resident UN coordinator Hannah Singer has extended the best wishes of the UN to the Sri Lankan Buddhist community during this Vesak festive season. Well, on that note, many Buddhist devotees engaged in their religious benevolent activities at home instead of visiting temples as usual on the Vesak full moon Poya day due to the spread of the coronavirus. Some of them observed still at home as well. The temple sites, which are usually seen filled with devotees in previous occasions, were seen quite deserted today. Yet the Mahasangha conducted daily religious observances in their respective temples to allocate this. The religious observances at the historic Jayashree Mahabodhiya premises and the Atamasthana Viharasthanas were conducted in this manner. Offering of Kiriyahara Puja and Buddha Puja were conducted under the Anushasana and guidance of Chief Incumbent of the Ruwanwali Mahasaya, Venerable Pallegama Hemaratana Thera. Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva also participated in these religious events. He also joined the activity of painting the Ruwanwali Mahasaya with white lime cement. The usually crowded Sri Dalada Maligawa in Kandy was also deserted this morning, yet the daily religious observances and rituals were conducted at the temple. Devotees of the Hunupitiya Gangarama Viharasthana in Colombo observed still in their respective residences today. Arrangements were made to send alms for the devotees to their respective homes with the assistance of security officers under the guidance and advice of Chief Incumbent of the Gangarama Temple, Venerable Dr. Kirinda Asuji Thera. Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardana and Acting IGP Chandana Vikramaratna also participated in this event.
Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Relations, Ravinath Arya Singha, says that the government has directed its attention in repatriating Sri Lankan migrant workers as well as students stranded overseas on priority basis. A new cabinet decision was reached yesterday regarding the repatriation of stranded Sri Lankan students and migrant workers. Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Relations, Ravinath Arya Singha, made these remarks in an exclusive interview with the national television today.
The Foreign Ministry's view always has been that repatriation, when it started, should be done on the basis of maximum vulnerability. It is on that basis that we recommended that South Asian students be prioritized, and that was concluded only about a week ago. Now several other groups of students also have been brought back and are being brought back, but yesterday's cabinet paper's significance was re-emphasizing something we said in our very original cabinet paper over a month ago, that foreign migrant workers are a category which are in dire straits in certain countries, and that therefore in parallel with any student movements that we must also pay attention and get back those who are in greatest vulnerability. And in this context, I see the Maldives, where a lot of Sri Lankans want to come back, particularly about 1,000 to 1,005 living in Malay Island are the most vulnerable. That is one. Then in places like Kuwait, in addition to whatever vulnerability from COVID, there is also an amnesty declared by the Kuwaiti government, and we are conscious that there is anxiety on the part of foreign employees that if they lose this amnesty, they will have greater difficulty coming out. The Kuwaiti government at this point is going to fly them back to Sri Lanka. So today, in fact, the foreign minister, with the strength of yesterday's cabinet paper, is going to engage, approval of cabinet, is going to engage with his Kuwaiti counterpart and will be discussing a process by which Sri Lankans in Kuwait can respect that amnesty offer. Our perception is that we must start the process, but that the Kuwait government is very conscious that we can't bring all the people who are wanting to come at this point. Therefore, we will have to, between the two governments, have some negotiation on how we face that out. Then there is also the problems of Sri Lankans, expatriates, workplaces like Bangladesh. Again, a very sensitive place where COVID is spreading at a very rapid rate. There are more than 1,000 people there, and out of those 1,000, I think about 300 and plus women and children. So we have to find a way how we can reduce that number facing vulnerability and eventually try to ensure that they face it's done away and totally eliminated. The cabinet paper was the second aspect of, first aspect was this bringing back people. The second aspect of the cabinet paper was equally important because it related to the quarantine facility. Because if we are bringing people, particularly people who are coming, who are doing work as housemaids and other categories, they can't afford to go to quarantine hotels. Therefore, we have to ensure that the quarantine facility is kept for them and tie that up with their movement back to Sri Lanka. So that is the second point which the cabinet paper made, to increase facilitation in the quarantine centers. And thirdly, the cabinet paper referred to the continued diplomatic representations to sustain the large number of migrant workers in their current places of domicile, and also to ensure that there is continued supply of dry rations to those most needy of them. This is something the missions have been doing over the past few weeks, and I think that is very important at this juncture, because there are small issues which come up from time to time, which intervention is necessary to tide out. Whether it's with a landlord who is demanding rent and you talk and try to get it pushed back, whether it is a business partner who is demanding back some payment due, whether it is somebody who is seeking shelter and fixing a family for them to stay with, or someone who hasn't a meal and wants some dry rations. So our missions across the world, not only in the Middle East, are providing that assistance to all Sri Lankans abroad. Naturally, our capacity will be limited, but together with Sri Lankan organizations as well as other philanthropic organizations in those countries and churches and religious bodies, we are trying to fulfill that requirement.
Foreign Relations Secretary Arya Singh also briefed on necessary information that the Sri Lankans expected to return to the country should be aware prior to placing the request for their repatriation.
And a migrant meaning as someone working abroad, and also those are the ones who have to really take a choice. There is also a category of about 3,000 people out there who are there on short-term visits and stuck. They don't have that choice. They have to come back home. But to those who have a choice, my advice has all along been that to make an objective assessment of one's circumstances. Somebody who is, say, in a country where schools are functioning and term is on might lose out education if that person tries to move around, The same way somebody who is in a job in whatever, Middle East or any country, blue collar, white collar, whatever, at this point when you come back, you might get that job, not get that job back because everybody is scaling down. Now, if you don't have a job already, then I can see the logic. But I think it is important that people also out there understand that when you come here, there won't be jobs. Because in Sri Lanka also we are going to find problems of unemployment. So adding to that unemployment will be a problem, not only to the country, but to the individual as well. So our plea through our missions to people out there is that they measure this very carefully, and those who want to come back, we will prioritize them in an objective way, not by looking at faces or connections, but by looking at the real necessity of their repatriation at this point and our capacity to bring them and quarantine them so that they are not a danger to those in the country and they don't unnecessarily expose themselves to danger on the way in and in this transition.
The Buddhist community in the country will be able to engage in Amisa Puja in a different manner tonight. Vesak Day commemorations have been restricted only for family members. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and his family members also joined in on the Vesak Day commemorations. This is how Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and his family members prepare to commemorate Vesak. Beautification of the cities is a hard task amid the prevailing situation in the country. However, adhering to the health instructions, youth and members of the security forces engaged in a city beautification process due to the utmost devotion they have towards Vesak and Lord Buddha. Meanwhile, the world's largest Buddhist flag was exhibited at the Colombo District Secretariat premises, which was designed by Sergeant Pushpakumara, attached to the Sri Lanka Army Police Services Regiment today.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is optimistic that the economy adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic could be rebuilt on a solid basis. The Presidential Task Force in charge of the economic revival and poverty eradication has been entrusted with the responsibility of formulating a new economic model to achieve this objective. President expressed these views during a meeting with the members of the newly appointed task force held at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday to discuss modalities relating to the resumption of civilian life and work from May 11th. President directed that the task force should prepare economic plans with specific targets in different areas that come under its purview and implement them. President was of the view that new opportunities are now open to attract tourists from countries where the COVID-19 virus has subdued. Medical tourism can be promoted by highlighting the capabilities of indigenous medical system which was used for treatment of the virus-infected people. In order to encourage high-spending tourists, visas must be issued to them supplemented by an internationally recognized certificate. Some tourists prefer to stay longer than usual in a particular country, especially during the winter season. President highlighted the possibility of strengthening the tourism sector by attracting such long-term travelers. Members of the task force were told to pay attention to promote domestic tourism so that the local hotel industry could be saved from collapse. President also pointed out the possibility of attracting more foreign investors to invest in the port city and the industrial zone in Hambantota. The ministry secretaries were entrusted with responsibility of identifying opportunities for investments instead of seeking foreign loans. During the last few weeks, a number of new innovations have been made in the country. Steps should be taken to introduce these products to the global market. Head of the task force, Basil Rajapaksa, said that the newly instituted task force has the capability of fulfilling its mandate with a new vision in order to achieve objectives set out by the President. The task force will support new businesses and will extend the fullest cooperation to already existing large, medium and small-scale enterprises, he stated. Although the private sector offices have been advised to resume work at 10 a.m. daily from May 11th, industrial and production activities can be adjusted in accordance with their requirements. Head of the Presidential Task Force, Basil Rajapaksa, warned that no loss of employment should take place both in the state and private sectors while the country is moving forward. Recalling recent requests by Sri Lankan students studying in other countries to return home, President remarked that it was an indication of the large number of students going overseas to pursue higher education. This has caused an immense outflow of foreign exchange income. President Rajapaksa said that measures should be taken to expand investment opportunities in the field of treasury, education in the country so that outgoing foreign exchange could be saved while providing educational facilities to foreign students in Sri Lanka. A large amount of money is being spent in important medicines annually. Most of these medicines can be manufactured locally. The task force was requested to prepare necessary background to develop pharmaceutical production in the country. The production of vegetables and other seeds required through domestic farmers was also discussed. Secretary to the President P.B. Jayasundara, Secretary to the Prime Minister Gamini Senarath, several ministry secretaries and number of leading businessmen also joined the discussion.
Welcome back to the news, and we continue with more news here at home. Now, taking a look at the local COVID-19 situation, the most number of recoveries from the virus's infections in the country was recorded today. 19 patients left the hospitals after completely recovering from hospital. Accordingly, a total number of 232 patients have recovered from the disease. So far, the country has recorded a total of 563 active COVID-19 patients currently receiving treatment in hospitals. A tally of 7 COVID-19 infected patients was recorded today. 6 patients were identified as members of security forces, while the other patient was reported as a close contact of a security force member. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health has indicated that 1,147 PCR tests were carried out yesterday. A total of 29 COVID-19 patients were recovered yesterday. 24 patients have been identified as security forces members, while another 4 patients have been detected as close contacts of those security force members. The other patient was an individual who was directed to the Palali quarantine centre. The isolated areas of Somapura and Abepura in the Lankapura Divisional Secretariat divisions in Polonnaruwa were reopened today. The 2 villages were declared as isolated areas after identifying a COVID-19 patient on the 22nd of April. All families residing in the villages were directed to self-quarantine, and the quarantining period concluded today. No COVID-19 patients have been detected from the Putlam district for a period of a month since April 7th. The obtaining of biosamples from randomly selected individuals in various areas in the Colombo district is currently underway these days. PCR tests and blood tests were carried out on 60 selected persons from a housing complex in Dematagoda today. Another Sri Lankan Airlines flight, UL303, carrying a group of students who were stranded overseas, returned to the country today. The group consisted of 197 persons, including members of the security forces, migrants and their family members. They were directed to a quarantining process as well. 101 residents in Nagalagam Vidya and Totalanga have been directed to the Galkanda Sri Lanka Army Quarantine Centre. The authorities have said that 25 persons were directed to a rehabilitation process for illegal drug usage. The Polonnaruwa magistrate ordered that these individuals should be directed to an 8-month rehabilitation process after completing the quarantine period.
The imposed island-wide curfew will continue to be in effect until 5 a.m. on May 11th. The curfew was imposed at 8 p.m. last night. The curfew imposed districts of Colombo, Kalatura, Gampaha and Putlam, identified as high-risk areas, will remain in force until further notice. Island-wide operations have been initiated to apprehend curfew violators at present. Accordingly, the police have arrested 116 curfew violators and 36 vehicles have been taken into custody in the last 24 hours. The total of 47,982 individuals have been arrested for violating the curfew orders and 12,484 vehicles have been taken into police custody. Meanwhile, a program to send those who have failed to return to their respective villages due to the COVID-19 pandemic situation in the country was held at the Mirihana police grounds today. The project was initiated under the 3rd phase of this program. Those who had informed their difficulties in returning to respective villages through the hotline numbers of the Prime Minister's office were also among this group. 1,200 persons in 15 police divisions of the Nugagoda Police Division were able to return to their villages today. The public has extended their appreciation for this initiative undertaken by the Prime Minister's office.
The United Nations warned on the chance of witnessing multiple famines during the global lockdown if the lives of millions of people cannot be saved in fragile nations. Globally, more than 3.8 million people have been confirmed infected with the new coronavirus so far, and more than 265,000 have died from the disease. The total number of recoveries in the world has increased over 1.3 million as of today, when COVID-19 has affected more than 212 countries and territories across the globe. The United Nations issued a new appeal for $4.7 billion in funding to protect millions of lives and stem the spread of coronavirus in fragile countries. The money is on top of the $2 billion in the UN already called for when the organization launched its global humanitarian response plan in late March. The full $6.7 billion is expected to cover costs of the humanitarian response plan until December. The UN has prioritized some 20 countries, including several in conflict such as Afghanistan and Syria. The new call for donations came as 9 more countries were added to the list: Benin, Djibouti, Liberia, Mozambique, Pakistan, Philippines, Sierra Leone, Togo and Zimbabwe. COVID-19 infections are expected to peak in the world's poorest countries in the next 3 to 6 months, according to UN estimates. The number of COVID-19 cases in the United States reached 1,263,243 as of today. Meanwhile, the death toll from the disease in the country has reached close to 75,000. New York remains the hardest hit state with 333,549 cases and 25,073 deaths, followed by New Jersey with 131,890 cases and 8,549 deaths. The United Kingdom had another 649 COVID-19 patients and deaths, bringing the total coronavirus-related death toll in the UK to 30,076 yesterday, as UK now has the highest fatality rate in all of Europe. The country has recorded 201,101 confirmed cases of COVID-19 infections as of yesterday. New infections of COVID-19 in Germany picked up slightly as the number of confirmed cases increased by 1,155 to a total of 168,162. The number of COVID-19 deaths in Germany increased by 282 to 7,275, resulting in a fatality rate of confirmed COVID-19 cases of 4.2%. The estimated number of people in Germany who had recovered from COVID-19 increased by 2,500 within one day to 137,600. France's death toll from the novel coronavirus rose to 25,809, the world's 5th highest behind the United States, Britain, Italy and Spain. From the 11th of May, France will start to slowly ease confinement to guarantee people's safety and inject dynamism into plunging economy. Schools will gradually reopen while workers will be allowed to return to workplaces and companies and will be allowed to resume their activities.
Indigenous groups from 9 countries in the Amazon basin called yesterday for donations to help protect 3 million rainforest inhabitants who are vulnerable to the spread of the novel coronavirus as they lack adequate access to health care.
Deep in the Amazon, Indigenous groups march proudly, thundering the ground with their stomps hand in hand, to stand against attacks on their people and tribal land. They've experienced an attack on multiple fronts. First fires were lit to clear the land for cattle ranchers, illegal mining, and Brazil's president has steamrolled his anti-environmental and Indigenous policies into law. Now, the threat of the coronavirus brings the fear that death could strike these isolated tribes too. Indigenous human rights defender Elcio Mancineri says the government isn't including Indigenous people in their plan.
There is no policy by the states to combat COVID-19 within Indigenous territories, and when it exists, as is the case in Brazil, institutions refuse to provide this service.
Instead, Indigenous groups from 9 countries in the Amazon basin rallied together on Wednesday and called for donations to protect the 3 million people of the rainforest. The virus has already infected nearly 200 of the 600 tribes, and over 30 people have been killed. In Peru's province of Loreto, that covers vast areas of the Amazon, hospitals are crammed with patients in corridors, outside, and doctors are struggling to deliver essentials like oxygen.
We are living in a terrible situation, a desperate situation, where we have to see people die every day, where we cannot deliver the necessary supplies.
A fund has been established aiming to raise $3 million in the next 2 weeks. That will be managed by the NGO Rainforest Foundations US that works to protect jungles. The foundation's director, Suzanne Pelletier.
This pandemic is not only a humanitarian emergency, it's also an environmental emergency. Indigenous peoples across the Amazon are the last line of defense against forest destruction, and they're our best hope of mitigating climate change.
The Amazon's population severely lack access to healthcare, so the funds will be wired directly to grantees' accounts. The risk of ethnocide was raised on Sunday by dozens of international artists and scientists in a letter to Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, urging him to protect Brazil's indigenous population.